I was hired as the first gift officer at my organization a few years ago, and since then we've grown our major gifts program from roughly $50,000 annually to more than $700,000.
I love hearing success stories like that, right, Andy?
I know.
Okay.
Me too.
Oh,
it's so great. Good job. I've been considering having us begin building a planned giving program, but am wondering if it's still too early for us. We're still a relatively young operation with a small development team, but we have strong donor momentum and increasing interest in long-term support. What is the right timing to introduce planned giving, and what pieces do we need to put in place before launching?
Congrats. And yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, for me, it always goes back to knowing there's limited capacity, right? Is the organization ready, like from a capacity standpoint? Do you have someone with either the expertise or the comfort level? Because oftentimes planned giving conversations are different kinds of conversations. I mean, they start with what does the donor want to achieve? What's the long-term impact? So some of it's the same, but sort of the tools and techniques can get sophisticated depending on how, what's needed and what will be the best for the donor. Now, you don't oftentimes have to have that expertise. You can tell the donor that, like, let's set up a joint meeting with your wealth advisor, your CPA, your estate planning attorney, whatever, like, let's get around a table to talk about what structures make the most sense. So if your organization doesn't have that in-house expertise, I wouldn't say that's a reason not to do it, but it is a reason then to partner or have somebody that can be a resource for more of the complexities of that and to knowing options available. But let's also be real that the reality, I think I read an article that, basically 80% of planned gifts are bequest, where someone just names your organization, right? Like puts it in their estate plan or whatever, and just an outright naming thing. And that's where most people lean towards. So even just building something like that, given your track record, given that you're hearing from donors who there's an interest in some long-term giving and maybe major giving that could happen during their lifetime and after their lifetime, I think you're getting all the signals. So to me, I go organizational capacity and readiness, right? Is there an agreement organizationally, like a CEO agreement, board agreement, whatever, just making sure this is something that's a priority? Because what it does oftentimes turn into is planned gifts can be structured a lot of different ways. Sometimes you're getting the gift, sometimes you're getting part of it during the donor's life. Sometimes it's completely, sort of down the road after the donor passes. There's a lot of different ways planned gifts kind of come to fruition. And sometimes having some buy-in from your leadership at the organization, I think, is important to saying, this is important enough. We want to actually offer it. We want to put some language on our website. We want to invest some money in it. We want to figure out maybe we need to do some skill and education training for our staff or identify other resources. Is there policy development around, what you do if you get this planned gift without a lot of details? Where does it go? So those are the kinds of things I think that are important to kind of build out as you get this off the ground. But at the very least, like putting language about this is an option, because you'd be shocked at how many donors just like go to a website and say, oh, it doesn't say anything on there about, I could leave the organization, in my will or estate plan. It must not be an option. And it absolutely is. And so you want to at least like address that with some basic language that you could, look at any other organization that maybe is larger, more sophisticated, kind of check out what they're doing. There's best practices in, what is the group called, Andy? I think there's a planned giving council or something nationally, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then the last thing I would say is kind of the greater the loyalty, the more likely the planned gift is sort of the rule of thumb. And so looking at how many donors do you have that have given to you 5+ years? How many have given to you 10+ years? And the greater the loyalty is usually the greater the indicator to make this a priority, legacy gifts a priority for your organization. So definitely kind of, I think you've got a little bit of homework to do to get some of these fundamentals in place, but don't feel like you have to be, the best in class with this. Sometimes you just got to get started and then kind of build it while you're also flying it, because you don't learn this stuff just all at once. It takes different situations and different kind of scenarios before you figure out more about how you need to kind of build this out.
Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board. Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing. Nonprofit resources.
Welcome to Nonprofit Everything, the podcast where hosts Andy Shurick and Stacey Wedding answer your questions about all things nonprofit.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Nonprofit Everything. I'm here with my good friend Stacey Wedding. I'm lucky enough to be here talking to Stacey in person, which I think everybody else is jealous, right? So Thanks for joining us. Thanks for letting me talk to Stacey, giving us an excuse to have this conversation once every couple of weeks. Send us questions, because that's how it works. You send us questions, we do our best to answer them or get a guest expert. We were talking earlier, we haven't had a guest expert in a while. So send us a hard one or a specific one so we have an excuse to go grab somebody and make them talk to us, because we will absolutely do that. And with that, we'll jump right in. My primary role in my organization is to delegate and to activate volunteers. With volunteer rates falling, do you have any creative suggestions for how I can get volunteers to follow through and to help them get excited about it in the process? And how do you harness the power of a volunteer who is super active but has gone off the rails a bit? This particular individual is funny and charming, but just won't stop talking in a meeting, and it leads to others not being engaged.
Oh, we all know those, don't we, Andy?
Yes, we do.
They are the death of every meeting and every volunteer experience. So, all right. So as far as like activating volunteers, I mean, I want to level set with some data. So historically, like over the last several years, volunteerism has continued to decrease, particularly like the number of hours, while there's like actually more people that are volunteering. So the numbers are up with the number of people, but the number of hours served per person has declined. So I just want to like level set with, you're not alone. That's kind of going on out there. And it's a challenge, right? And every time there's like a survey or kind of exploring this topic, people are like, it's work is my barrier, right? Like work is the biggest barrier to volunteerism. So I think a few things that just kind of help make volunteers come back, but also to attract them, is starting with making it an experience like your volunteers have never had before. And by that, I mean, like, how do you get to know your volunteers as people? And yes, this takes time. But asking them, like, what is it you're hoping to get out of this experience? Are you, is there something that you're hoping, is this something that you just kind of like, you're looking to get your kids involved? Or is there another goal you have here? Is this just a truly like feel good? Is this, trying to understand, are they looking to make this a serious long-term commitment? Or is this kind of an one and done when they feel like they need something that's a feel-good thing to have in their life? And that looks very different than how you design the activity or like how you figure out how to plug them in. And so I think starting with just kind of that relationship is really important about just understanding volunteers and their motivations, because if they're looking to build skills versus if they're looking to make friends and have a sense of community, or they have some connection to your mission, that is going to impact where you plug them into a volunteer opportunity. So I would start with that. I also think trying to figure out how you kind of match the opportunity to their availability. Sometimes I think we do these like all day things on a Saturday, and yeah, those can work for some organizations, but what about, there's a lot more creativity happening around micro volunteering where like there's something that takes 30 minutes from a couch, right? So it's like, it accessible, and it's something where people can feel like they're still contributing. So the remote and virtual volunteer opportunities and figuring out ways that you can engage people to help you with that, I think can help kind of reduce the barrier that you're talking about, particularly for those who are juggling a lot going on between work and life and kids and family and all that stuff. So, and I also think there's this sort of the thing we do with employees, we should also be doing with volunteers, and that's expectations, right? What are the expectations on the outset? Like, not this general, hey, we need you consistently, or we would like your help, every month, but hey, we need you for 3 Saturday mornings this quarter. And I think that specificity actually helps people wrap their brain around it, because when we're like broad and we make this, like loosey-goosey thing, people don't necessarily know how to commit, what success looks like married to their life. So the clearer like you can be on the outset, I think the better. And then like the last piece I would say is just obviously ongoing feedback throughout, like asking, what did you like about this? What could have been better? Like getting that feedback and using it to build your program, but also giving people some sense of ownership. I don't know about you, Andy, but I've done volunteer projects where sometimes I truly want to be the minion, like let me come in and take orders. And that feels good to turn off my brain for a day. But organizations where I have a longer term commitment, and there's a lot of some science and brain science behind this, actually shows that people do better when they actually feel a sense of ownership over the role. So like someone who's driving a van, or someone, right, like who is in charge of delivering XYZ workshop. And if you have those types of opportunities for your nonprofit, like figuring out how you get that reliable, consistent volunteer where they actually feel like it's their job, like where they're like, this is my volunteer job, can make a huge difference to like level of longevity, loyalty, consistency. So, that's part one, but I'll pause there because that's like a whole bunch of ideas. And I don't know what you think, Andy.
That's hard to disagree with any of that. I mean, it all makes perfect sense. I think the thing that resonates for me, right, is communicating with the volunteers to find out what it is that they need to do, right? Because you like the example you have is sometimes you want to go and just turn your brain off, or sometimes you want to have some sort of responsibility for something. And those are like two totally different activities, two totally different volunteers. And sometimes somebody might want to do one, and sometimes somebody might want to do the other. So making sure that you have all of those kinds of opportunities available is probably a good thing. For me, one of the things that I've seen where it makes it hard to volunteer somewhere is when it's either not flexible, where you have to do this mega shift that's during the day on a weekday, which just isn't going to work for most people. I mean, unless you're looking for a very specific kind of volunteer that isn't doing anything on a weekday for 9 hours or whatever it is. Or like having a menu of options where here are all the things that you can do, and here's all the scheduled time that's available, and it's on weekends, it's in the evenings, it's during the day, it's in the mornings, it's in the afternoons, where it's like a whole big area. Like you could pick from any of these things like a giant menu. And then people are much more likely to go, oh yeah, then there's a space for me where I can slot myself in here because that fits with my schedule, right? So making sure that there's just a lot of flexibility and availability for different types of jobs and different times to do those jobs, I think is a really good place to make sure that you're not just like leaving people alone to just pick like the reason why aren't they coming to volunteer anymore? And it's like, because they have jobs, just like you said, right? They have a normal 9 to 5 and they also have kids in the evenings and it's impossible to go anywhere. So yeah, I couldn't agree with everything you said more.
I also just wonder if people can really be turned off with the wrong volunteer experience. So I'm just glad, or like a volunteer experience that wasn't a positive one, where they felt underutilized, where they felt like it was disorganized. So I just want to also reinforce for listeners and for the person who wrote this, like, how do we make this an entree into a larger commitment to our organizations, whether it is that you become a longstanding volunteer, whether it's that at some point you become a donor because you believe so much in our work. And so I really want to say, like, kudos to you for thinking about this, because I actually think volunteers are the lifeblood of organizations. And because like society is changing, we also have to change our volunteer opportunities. So that traditional, to your point, Andy, of like this really long tenured kind of job on a specific day, very few people that works for. And so thinking about how we design volunteer opportunities that meet like the current state of the way people work through life and move through life. I mean, you think about it, if you had like a micro volunteerism opportunity, or like a couple times a week, you need to hop on a 30-minute virtual call as a mentor to a young person or whatever, like it might look like, or a phone call to a senior just to check in or whatever that looks like. I just sit there and I go, you could do that at work. You could do that on your drive to work. You could do like, and that's the way I think people are like more fluid these days. So maybe that's part of why we're even seeing the decreases in hours, because maybe, I mean, this is just a speculation, but maybe organizations haven't caught up with how we have to like let volunteer projects evolve with the times. But anyways, that's probably a thesis paper and not a podcast topic.
I want to follow up on what you said, design. Like the word you used was design, which I think is important to let people know that it's a lot of work to be able to manage volunteers. They come in, they need stuff. You need to have the right things for them to do. You have to have all those things sort of planned in advance. So you have to sort of recognize that this is the job of a person, is to be responsible for all of these activities, which is an awful lot of work, and to make sure, like you said, that they're meaningful and that people are doing the right work and that they're coming away with a good experience. And the way and sometimes organizations are sort of underfunding that position or not giving that person enough authority to be able to do new things, because it's usually like the volunteer coordinator is never like a chief level role at most organizations, right? But there's so many follow-on benefits of a good volunteer. Not only are they helping you do the work without having to be paid, these are the people that are much more likely to be donors later on, because they've got a good experience with the organization. And when they're asked, they're like, I mean, some of them are like, yeah, I already give you because time and that's enough. But some of them are going to be like, yeah, I love what you're doing. I want to be able to participate financially. So here's some money too, right? Those are the this is like the acquisition campaign that also gets some of the work done at your organization. So you shouldn't think of it as like a low wage job as volunteer person either.
Yeah, I love that. And so also moving on to, okay, so you've got the volunteers, but then you've got this volunteer who you talk about being funny and charming and engaged, right? Like all these things that are good things, but it sounds like sucking the air out of the room, causing others to disengage. And so there are many different strategies for this. And I'm going to throw a couple out there, realizing that not everyone's willing to have the conversation, right? But the most direct way is to have the conversation. And it's actually not having it in a way that's punitive. It's like, what is the compliment sandwich they talk about, right? Like where
right.
Like you start by just like, we so appreciate all of the enthusiasm and passion you bring, and we love it. And we want more people like you. But we're like noticing this trend because you've got so much enthusiasm, kind of like others don't know how to like jump in or to have a chance for their voice or how they could help participate. So like, can you help us think through, like become our partner in thinking through, how can we how can we start to engage others? Like, is that having you maybe not take the lead and jump right in to like volunteer or to say something and like, let's see what others do first. And like, I would literally just offer some suggestions, but then having the person, and maybe this is too soft, and people who are listening to this who are super direct are going to be like, just tell the person to shut up, right? And maybe that's your style. And you know what? And there's a room for all of it, because you can also like be more direct than I'm doing. But I find most people, these are the things people go, I can't say that to a volunteer. I can't, like, how could I insult or offend someone like that? And so I think just kind of helping them understand, like, your enthusiasm is so much that it's actually preventing others from contributing ideas too. And so how do we make this a win-win? And so that's probably the most direct way. I think there's less direct ways that are things that like every facilitator is trained to do, right? Like you know that, Andy, right?
Yep.
Like the 2-minute rule, like everyone has 2 minutes and we're going to do a round robin around the table, like, or whatever, 30-second rule or whatever it is. I also think like sometimes saying to the person who is the one that is like the one that has the challenge with not shutting up, telling them, will you be the timekeeper? Could you also be our note taker? Which sounds probably slimy, but it is a workaround for it.
Yep.
And, I think also, sort of just the other thing I've seen work is just really like setting specific norms, like, hey, these meetings, we want to hear as many voices as possible. So like setting the norm up front, like I, as the chairman of this meeting or whatever my role is, am going to like, make sure that if someone is already like offered something, we're going to actually leave room for other voices. So you start to just say, these are the expectations of it. And then you actually have to do it. You need to call on some of the other people that sometimes do have good ideas, but they actually need you to say, hey, Andy, you look like you're deep in thought. Do you have something on your mind? I mean, there is an art and a skill to that can literally move mountains and not make the person who's a little more verbose and boisterous like feel totally put out. So I don't know. Those are a couple ideas. Am I being too nice like that? You always are good at telling me, Stacey, that is way too soft. So
well, I mean, obviously, if it's a volunteer that's been around for a really long time and is super active, they're probably okay with a conversation that's something like, exactly what you said. We're so excited that you're too super engaged. However, it's becoming a challenge for us to get the material out to the rest of the volunteers that we need to because you're so engaged. So if you wouldn't mind throttling it back, you're at an 8, I need you at a 3. If that's okay with you, let me know. But like all the, you're saying like the facilitator tricks, right? They're all, the facilitator tricks, for those of you that don't know, are also the same things that elementary school teachers use to keep kids quiet in an elementary school class. One of which is to stand really close to the person that's talking. So if you're like in a boardroom and there's one person that won't shut up, you just go and you stand behind their chair. And if, depending on, you'd put your hands on their shoulders. I don't know if you're allowed to do that anymore, but the old way was you'd put your hands on your shoulders and it makes them just completely stop talking. It is that personal touch of someone's hands on your shoulders that just makes you like immediately stop talking. It works better for female facilitators to a male speaker, but I don't know if I'd try it the other way around. You might get in trouble. But like standing really close to somebody, like putting your hand like on the desk in front of them, just to give them that sort of nonverbal, you need to shut up now so we can continue to work. That one works really well too. And then giving, like you said, giving them a task, like a note taker task, or telling them there's this one person who's really shy and is having, this is an elementary school one, really shy and having trouble talking in class. Would you be the person that helps them talk? So sit next to them and listen to what they're saying and see if you can engage them so that you can get them participating with the rest of us too. And that gets them to stop using their mouth and start using their ears, which is another elementary school tactic. But all of them work just fine for this scenario, I think.
You know what I couldn't help but think of when you were sharing about elementary school? What is the thing about clap once, something, clap twice, like clap twice if you hear me, or whatever that thing is. Clearly I don't have children, so I'm a little bit like out of my, but I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh.
There are so many good ones. My favorite one is Quiet Coyote, which is just like a hand signal that you put up like this. It's like supposed to be like a little quiet coyote. You just put your hand up like this, and then everybody else is supposed to do the same thing, and their mouth shuts when the coyote goes up. It actually works wonders. But the clapping, I've seen the clapping thing work too. Yeah.
I wish our listeners could see you with your fingers and your little coyote fingers.
Quiet
so
coyote.
I was like, I think maybe we need to take a picture of you and put it out there for this podcast. But anyway, he's like, no, don't do it. So anyway, no, I think those are all good, right? Those are all good things. And, I guess it's a good problem to have that you have a volunteer who's, overly zealous. I mean, some people are, others are just like, please, begging for volunteers. But why can't it ever just be like easy, right? Can't this stuff just kind of like be easy? It's because people are involved, and we know that makes it a little more complicated.
Can the board tell the ED that they can't bring other staff to a board meeting? Also, when does it make sense to have other staff besides the ED at a board meeting?
I mean, the short answer is yes. I mean, it's the board's meeting, and the board can absolutely say,
is that why it's called that?
Yeah. Imagine that.
Imagine
board
that.
Meeting, right? I mean, crazy enough, Andy, I've actually had some boards that have said before, like, I'm not talking a separate executive session where you go into like closed session and you ask no staff to be, including the ED, to be present. I've actually worked with boards that are like, should the ED, like startup boards, right? Should the ED be present in a board meeting? I'm like, yes, absolutely, they should be.
How are you going to know what's going on?
Yeah, but that's a whole other topic and probably another question. So I'm going to flag that for anyone who wants to ask that for us. But no, I mean, the board can absolutely say no other staff. I mean, for me, though, if I were the ED, I would want to understand the thinking and the why behind that, and not knowing the size of an organization and a lot of other variables and history. It seems strange to me because it feels like I've seen sort of two opposite ends of this, where you have one organization where the staff, like probably too many staff are at a board meeting, and it almost feels like there's some confusion of roles. And then there's other times where it would actually really help to have some of the director level staff to sort of answer some of the questions that come up for the board, while not operational, but for the board to understand the context of where the organization's at. And so I think what's important is it does make sense, I think, to have staff come for some or all of a board meeting if there is a role for them and if there is a conversation and something that like they should help inform the board about. Because, to me, it's all about what are we trying to get from this? Like, what is to have staff there just to have staff there doesn't make a lot of sense and is a waste of time and money in my mind. But like, if it's actually for a purpose, like, hey, this is going to help answer specific questions that myself as a CEO or ED am not able to answer, but I have like my staff who are in the trenches more or who know more and can answer the specifics about the trends they're seeing or things that are top of mind for the board as part of sort of the organizational dashboard and report. Like, absolutely. I mean, I think I think there's also though caution to be had with this, because as much as I love it when, and I always, in the past, when I worked at an organization, I was always as a staff, as a kind of a high level staffer, I was always at those board meetings, and it helped inform me a lot about how the board was thinking and what questions they were asking. It also, I think, helped the board understand more about some of the areas they were governing. So I think it was a win-win. But the thing that makes it really important to like the boundaries are important in it, of helping the staff, if they've never attended a board meeting before, know what is their role in that meeting, what is their role compared to the board's role, and also, again, making sure those lines don't get so blurred that then staff start to go around the chief executive to go to the board to try to make a case. And that is where, if you don't actually provide some of that baseline education or make sure staff that are in that board meeting are aware of it, it can get messy quickly. And no party is doing it intentionally. Like, it's because there's a lack of knowledge or training or understanding, including board members. Sometimes board members don't understand. They're like, oh, all the staff are under our purview, right? We govern this organization. And so it's like, no, you actually have one employee that you hire, evaluate, support, and potentially fire if they're not doing it. You have one. And so like, no, you don't get to do that. But anyways, so yes, I think it does make sense to have staff when, depending on the size of the organization and what you're trying to accomplish, is sort of my thoughts on this. What about you, Andy?
I just will say, when I read the question, like, I was imagining, because it's the way it's written is, can they be told that they can't bring other staff? And I'm imagining like the ED has like a masseuse or something who just like massages her shoulders throughout the whole meeting, and the board is creeped out by it and wants them to stop telling them. So, can we tell her not to bring the masseuse? Is that allowed? So yeah, that was just that was my mental picture when I read the question.
Never in a million years will have my brain go there to think of a masseuse at a board meeting. But hey,
maybe that's what we need. Make him better. Yeah, I will say that as a finance person on uncomfortable meeting days, I would love to have someone have told me I didn't need to be there. That sounds like a dream. But yeah, I can't disagree with anything you said, Stacey.
Okay, you made it through another episode of Nonprofit Everything, and we're so glad you stuck with us throughout. I am really curious to know what your favorite question was, because the questions are what make this happen. And so tell us, dive in, give us the juicy details, tell us what's on your mind, and send your questions to us. You can find us on the socials. You can find us at the nonprofiteverything.com website, the questions at nonprofiteverything.com. We make it easy and we take it. We make sure you stay anonymous, and we ask your questions and dive deep. So thank you for being with us today, and we'll look forward to your questions and seeing you and catching you in a couple of weeks.